ready to start.
All right.
Now,
I'm going to go ahead and record on my end, too, in case I want to preserve any of this.
Okay. I don't know why it's echoing on this end. Okay. Well, first of all, I should introduce you. Your name is Galen Fous.
It's Fous.
Fous. Okay. I'm sorry, I messed up everyone's last names. So, it's Fous.
No problem.
And
Many people do that.
You are an author, a therapist, for a sexuality therapist.
Yeah, I term myself a kink-positive and sex-positive therapist.
Mm-hmm.
That helps people primarily understand, uncover, embrace what's authentic for them sexually, i.e. their sexual truth, i.e. their sexual identity orientation, and then begin to help untangling the inevitable decades often of shame, fear, trauma, harsh self-judgments, that confusion, that they have around, and understanding how can I now integrate that into my everyday life and relationships.
Do you find a lot of people have that shame inside of them when they're kinky, they're in the BDSM lifestyle?
Yeah, we live in a sex-negative shaming culture, so it's hard for anyone to escape that type of developmental experience of being shamed around their sexuality or made to feel it's bad or they're disgusting or their bodies are only animals do that kind of messaging, or you're going to hell. We are immersed, at least in the U.S., and that kind of narrative as we're growing up, so we don't really have a good understanding of our sexuality because we don't look at it. But in my research, I have a research project underway called the Discover Your Personal Erotic Myth Survey. And this is a tool both for an individual to help come to better understanding and drill down more into the depths of what's going on for them sexually as they're driven to orgasm or other deep erotic state. Which is a whole other topic I can talk about, but in reference to do people feel shame, are many people feeling shame around their sexuality? In that survey, I think it's somewhere around 70%, feel all kinds of conflicts and complications because of this mixed signals. They have their authentic desire, which is great, intact, no problem. Yeah, I love to be kinky, I'm submissive, I'm dominant, I'm a sadist, I'm a masochist, and all the ways that can show up. And they also have to struggle with the parts of them that are still internalized now, that are still shaming them. They have a message then it activates in their body in a way that they feel a little sick or disgusted, or disconnected, or especially if they've gone and had a scene, say, or engaged it in some way, the days coming after that will be a total attack by these internalized parts that want to keep shaming the person, don't want that sexuality to be freely expressed, wants to prohibit them, wants to stop them, wants to negate the beautiful, truth of themselves as a sexual being, because your sexuality is your birthright, whatever it looks like. And the adult, the mature path is to learn how to operate that sexual creature that you might be in a way that's in integrity with your agreements, values, and relationships.
Okay, and now I have a question because this is my personal experience. So I'm curious. Does a lot of the shaming actually come from parents? Now, with my father, he was great. He was, if you find someone you love and you care about them, and he was fine with it. But my mother, I had my son out of wedlock, and first thing out of her mouth was, "You're a slut, you're a whore,
Yes.
Nice girls don't do that, and if you would have kept your legs closed, you shouldn't be having a baby out of wedlock, I mean, she just went on and on and on, and it never stops. My father told her, you need to stop that business and stop talking to our daughter like that, but it didn't stop her.
So good for him.
So do you find that a lot of it does come from parents?
No, that's precisely where it comes from to the greatest extent. The mother and or the father are passing along this, or it could be an older brother or sister or a teacher or a priest or a minister, any authority figure. When you're a child, you are basically, with few exceptions, at the mercy of the authority in your life, be that parents or other. And you don't have the personal agency and autonomy and power to push back and hold the boundary and say, don't throw that stuff at me. I don't, that's not true, my truth. They just, what happens is people will then shove their sexuality into hiding, into secret, where they keep it undercover. And this is what leads to there's an epidemic of people leading secret sex lives in our culture because they are afraid of anyone else knowing. I have a psychological disorder I've defined, I call sexual authenticity disorder. And this is the extreme fear of revealing or someone else discovering the true nature of your sexuality and how you operate it in the world. In secret for the most part. Few people are living openly their authentic sexuality in our culture. And so this is a terrible burden on the psyche. One, because when it's operating in shadow, when your sexuality is operating in shadow, that means you are sneaking, hiding, lying, cheating, being out of integrity, taking risks that are irresponsible, and all of those kinds of things until it culminates in this bust, where now you see it in the news headlines every week. A minister, a preacher, a teacher, a politician, a sports figure, a celebrity is brought down in their sexual dishonesty. They've been caught in something, and often quite hypocritical in the stance they're taking in the world. This is getting revealed. So there's this incredible fall from grace and media frenzy, and the spouses, either standing strongly by their side or, cuts, goes through, files divorce papers, and they could lose their jobs. I mean, it's a terrible psychic burden to be hiding your sexuality because you feared so greatly getting caught, getting discovered. Did I cover my tracks? Did I erase that? So this is on the psyche, the personal psyche, and that celebrity level of what we see in the news is just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in every community, in every city, village, town, county, across the states. It's all sorts of people are leading secret sex lives, and they are getting caught and busted, and this calamity arises. It's a huge tragedy, all because they don't know how to be. They don't feel safe enough to be able to say, I'm into this. I like to do this with my partner. They don't describe or discuss that with their partners before they begin. That's the problem right there as well, that we don't understand how to have honest conversations when we're forming relationships about what our sexuality looks like, how frequently we desire, because then people wind up in erotic mismatches because they didn't have that in-depth discussion about, let's compare our sexualities, see if we fit there. Oh, we have the same goals with children, and we have the same spiritual values, and yeah, we're this way politically, and we're into this kind of art or creativity. But people don't say, I'm into tying up and spanking and flogging. You should see all the equipment I have. How about you? If people started that right in the first conversation, they would eliminate erotic mismatches and also wasting a lot of time going down the path of maybe hoping that, this person, I can sneak in a little bit of my kink with them and maybe they'll be okay. They don't, it's all subversive, now generally how we operate in our sexuality. Not everyone, but I mean, this is a great majority of people. My clients that I work with, are all mostly struggling of how do I be who I am and also be the good person that I am in the world, or aspire to be anyway.
And, okay, so, well, because I see that a lot, because you're online and you get contacted by people, and a lot of them you get contacted by husbands whose wives just aren't interested, and just how do you help them deal with that? I mean,
Yes. Well, as I said, the first step should be that you should have had the discussion before you partnered.
yeah,
You know, now people are decades into their relationship. Their truth is still what it is. Their partner isn't into it, and so the person with the least sexuality or different sexuality pretty much rules the sexuality of the relationship. And that wasn't a negotiation. That wasn't a discussion. It just kind of happens by default because people don't understand, oh, I have a sexual birthright. I get to negotiate with my partner just like everything else that we do together about, oh, so you're not into this. I'm sorry we didn't have this conversation, but we're 20 years in now. I do love you in all these other ways and I want to stay together. However, I need to speak now finally about my sexuality and your sexuality and see how can we, I get you don't want it, but I do. So how are we going to work that out, together? Let's have the conversation because I'm not just going to give up my sexuality. But most people will give up their sexuality. Or again, then it just pushes it into hiding and they're contacting other people online. Oh, my wife's not into it. And are hoping to, that they'll take that risk,
yeah,
and often get busted and pay the price as well. So, I mean, this is because sexuality is so strong. It doesn't go away. We think we can just hide it, push it down, put it away. That's not the way it works. Sexuality is a powerful force. It's like hunger or thirst or something else. It is not going to be denied. Or if it is denied, there's a great cost to that, in our bodies, in our psyche, in our emotional sense, Now, someone could, in their relationship, if they were really in love and wanted to stay with their partner and they had a totally different sexuality, and that other partner says, no, I will not stay with you if you even think about that or want to go express that, I won't do that. That person, the counterpart, could consciously choose, okay, I love you so much, I want to be in this relationship, it's going to be a burden for me, but I will give up my pursuit of my sexuality out of devotion to our relationship. Someone could consciously make that choice. That's up to them, but they could do that and stay in the relationship. If, however, they believe self-harmful can be the other end of the spectrum. If they get to the place where, look, I got to get real about my sexuality, and their partner says no, they might be in the place where this is not going to work.
yeah,
I can't stay in this relationship if there's no room for my sexuality. So, and that's a very tough situation if you're going 20, 30 years, you got kids, property, all that other social things. It's a very complicated situation, and it's unfortunate because you could have easily avoided that if you, in the beginning, you were able to speak honestly about what was true sexually.
Now, do you give seminars on this?
Yeah, I do at times, different webinars, or I lecture at places, or I have a workshop right now for men coming up in Portland in January. It's not kink focused, but it is authentic sexuality focused, and it's called Being a Sexually Authentic, Conscious, and Empowered Man. And so, this is again back to the idea that you have a birthright for your sexuality, and you have a right to claim it and have its territory and, negotiate around it. And then it's also about understanding, okay, you for decades have been hiding your sexuality and operating it in ways that are in shadow or out of integrity or not in accord with your responsibilities, values, agreements, etc. This is about cleaning that up, This is about getting real about your sexuality and then how to integrate it into your everyday life and relationships. And also how to go to the depths that's there once you do embrace it. This is about how to be embodied, present, mindful, how to negotiate, how to walk your talk with it being in impeccable integrity, where you are a trustworthy figure in how you operate your sexuality. You know, you do operate consensually and with full negotiation and transparency. So this is what I offer and teach people. And then how to drill down into the past we talked about earlier, about the shame and the fear and the harsh internal judgments that are still operating in the unconscious. You know, it's important to bring these things to clarity, to conscious awareness, so that you can have some, from there, ways to start resolving the shames and the fears and the traumas, unfortunately, that might have occurred.
Now, I probably should ask this. You say Portland. There's more than one Portland in the U.S.
Yeah, take your pick. I'll go to any of them. Now, this one's in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. Now, and my other question is, you say it's for men. Now, will women be excluded if they wanted to attend and find out more about what...
Yes. Yes. In this particular workshop, this is for men. It's focused for men. So that's the container that's being built is to hold the space for men to come and get honest, get real, get healed around their sexuality. So I have also done, I don't have any planned right this minute, but I do a conscious erotic dominance and submission workshop that can be for any gender, any orientation along the spectrum, but it's teaching the principles of conscious erotic dominance and submission. Along similar lines that I spoke about with the men's workshop of, you know, claiming what's true, growing, understanding it more, being able to reach the depths, learning how to be embodied and present and mindful, how to negotiate impeccably and unravel, untangle the things that resist your authentic expression. Because these also have a physical resistance, you know. The psyche is saying, oh, you're bad, you're terrible, and that's also weighing on the body as well, because there's a gesture that wants to express. So a lot of people, when they come to me clients, there's an amazing constriction in the throat, you know. Yeah. When they start, so I say, so what does your desire look like, or what's your intent? And it's like, you know, they can barely speak. It's just like there's some part of them choking. Don't say that. No, you can't come out, you know. And this is bringing awareness about how the body is a component, both in how we express, you know, naturally. I mean, the gestures of, you know, all come through our body. Our emotions express through the gestures of our body, through the face, you know, muscular actions, you know, that are instinctual for the most part. We don't need to even think of them. But when we are inhibited, when these internal messages have taken our power, where we are afraid to express our natural, authentic, there are consequent muscular gestures that are holding those gestures back. So even if, you know, so for instance, I'll work with guys, say, and they're trying to embrace their dominance, you know, how to step into this potent, you know, powerful masculinity, and they're swinging a flogger, you know, where you can just tell that they're not, the gesture isn't complete, isn't full, you know, they're kind of holding back in some way. So it's you can like learn to work, notice what's going on to be able to get those parts out of the way, so you can fully embody and, you know, just in that natural instinctual way that you've already have within you. You know, you can learn to bring your full body expression into any of your actions, and reduce the limiting gestures, because this is what tension is, you know, a gesture trying to express and a gesture trying to hold that expression back, you know. This is why we have so many physical pains and aches, is often it's this tension between one part of us trying to hide or cover. You know, it's like when someone is angry in a situation, they're trying to look cool, you know, and their face is like wanting to just explode in some way, and they're turning red, but they're just trying to say, oh, that's nice, you know. This is like the evidence, or how you can see that you have two different gestures, and how we operate often trying to hide and cover up these truths, but that's what the body is designed to naturally express the truth.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask about your books. You have some books out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I published my first book back in 2000 called The Sharp Edge of Love, and that was a real kind of a tribute in a way to four particular women who I engaged with at the start of my journey. That's 20 years ago is when I came out publicly and have been operating 24/7 in the world as a kink-oriented man. And so in The Sharp Edge of Love was these four amazing stories of four amazing women and their journey kind of running parallel to mine, as they open to the depths of their sexuality. And they were all quite depraved, kinky, perverted, nasty, filthy girls like I enjoy. So it was a pleasure to, journey with them and also the depth of their intelligence and spirit and soul and vulnerability and honesty, or deceitfulness. And this is the whole picture of both the shadow and the light side of kink. I mean, the first story is an amazing story, kind of like an Elmore Leonard novel, who was a mystery detective writer. It was full of intrigue and deceit and betrayal and violence and brutality, and it's a fascinating. It would have made a good movie in itself. So there's 4 chapters like that in that book, and then I then just continued my journey for a while, and eventually went back and got a master's in transpersonal psychology because I started working with people and helping them embrace their sexual truth. I had gotten outed very horribly right out of the gate 20 years ago by my ex I was going through divorce with, and she discovered once I separated, I wasn't divorced yet, but I put some ads up on like alt.com and bondage.com, and I was having a few correspondences, but I still owned a business together. And when I was out of town, she got on my computer, found this, turned it all over to her lawyers as evidence, that I was a psychopathic, pathological, sick man who had ruined their lives, and just amazing lies and deceit on her part. But anyway, that was taken as the truth by a community I'd lived in for 27 years, and all my business associates and friends and couples associates and the employees of our business and my 2 sons who were 13 and 15 and my family. She outed me as this sick, fucked up, disgusting man. And not one person, except for my sister. My other family was deceased by then, but my sister stood by my side, and one man in a town I lived in for 27 years. Outside of that, everyone else, no one called me and said, "Wow, what's your side of the story, Galen? You were the coach of all the kids' soccer and basketball teams all those years, and you were at the PTA meetings, and you showed." I mean, I was an upstanding citizen and a community guy in all other regards, and so her story, unfortunately, was so hysterical and so triggered such internal fear, I think, in everyone, that no one could say, "Well, that's interesting. That's curious. Galen, let me tell me what's going on from your side." It was like I was instantly an outcast and a persona non grata, and I would get people calling me, and you're sick, and like just going off on me.
Oh my gosh, how awful!
And and I was 27 years in this town, so I mean, I couldn't walk down the street without suspecting, is that person looking at me because they heard, and because of the grapevine, my ex told everybody, and kept telling everybody. She would spend hours just being a victim about this whole thing and getting sympathy and horror from people, which 20 years ago, kink was much more less. There was not anybody who was kink positive, basically, in those days, hardly anyway. It's including the courts. So, the courts ruined me. I lost all my property. I lost rights to visit my sons and everything. I was like totally kind of destroyed by this, or my old life was destroyed. So the blessing was I was out. Anybody I would have, I intended to, like, I was getting this divorce. I intended to then get real about my sexuality as a kink-oriented man, but I was totally not envisioning that anyone else would know, other than my partner. I figured I'd get a partner, and I wasn't even into the kink scene or thought about that at that time. I just wanted to live that way, and I would be the guy Galen I had been beforehand, and no one else would really know. That was what I thought was going to happen. But suddenly, man, I'm like just fully exposed and under the spotlight, and also cast out of my old life. And that was a horrible emotional. It took incredible fortitude not to, kill myself, because I was vilified, and I lost everything. I lost all my assets and all my business. It was really just ruined. And I'm also fortunate that I'm stubborn, and I have pride, and I wasn't going to let that take me down. So I was determined to overcome that. But then I recognized from that, because I'm at heart a compassionate man, what a struggle it is for people to be able to own their sexual truth, and what risks are involved, and how complicated and difficult it is. That's why so many people hide and keep their secret sexuality, because of, you can get ruined, your life, you can lose your job, your partner, your family, friends, and all. But the truth is, those aren't really qualified to me as family, friends, and such, if they are going to judge me for who I am. Who needs friends or family like that, really? So I was out suddenly, and so from that place, I was able to, I started moving towards helping others, on their journey to get real about their sexuality, and eventually I became a therapist in that regard, and so for 20 years now I've been on that path and on that journey, both my own personal journey, but also a journey of advocating for being a sexually authentic person. You're right to be who you are sexually, and then understanding how to untangle all that resists that full expression.
Well, I'm wondering now. I mean, even though you went through, you clearly went through a terrible hardship and a terrible struggle, a terrible time. I mean, you were treated very poorly, and not, you were treated without dignity, and just really everything that went bad could have. Do you look, but now seeing where you're at, that you're able to say, I'm Galen, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is, you love it or leave it. Do you look back at it as a semi-blessing now?
No, it was a total blessing. I mean, it was, that's the miracle of life. The soul, I think I believe in our personal souls as a meaningful part of who I am and how I operate, and I can see how my soul for all my life, because I've been this way since I was 5 years old, basically. I was aware of my sexuality, and again, back to my survey, 40% of the people, of 4,000 people who've taken that survey, identified that by the age of 10, they were already awakened sexually, in specific fantasies, masturbating to it, etc. And so, so like I hid it though for 45 years of my life, desperately hid it. Like I said, sexual authenticity disorder. I was terrified of anybody ever knowing or discovering, outside of I had hoped I'd run into a partner who would go, oh wow, do you like, and who would open up to it and go that way. But otherwise, it was totally hidden. So to my soul, I could see was like, okay, Galen, this hiding shit is over, and you're going to go through hell, but you're going to come out the other side. So that was, I could never imagine I'd be doing what I was doing now if that event hadn't happened. If I hadn't gotten outed, I don't think I could have had the courage to, okay, hey, everybody, I'm going to step out in front of the camera and tell everybody what my sexuality is all about and speak up for others, you know. I can't, yeah, I was so terrified for the first 48 years. This was what it took to kind of boot me, you know, out into the open. And I'm so grateful I've gotten to live the last 20 years totally openly. I don't hide my browser history or tabs or, you know, what I do at all. I mean, I'm not blatant about it and everybody I meet starts, you know, but I mean, if it's, because I lecture, I'm on interviewed, you know, my books are out there. I'm a public figure, so I'm blessed to be able to be in the position I am now to do what I'm doing. It's exactly who I am and what my mission is in life, and so yeah, it was a huge blessing. Is wrapped in a tragedy.
How many books do you have out?
Just the two, The Sharp Edge of Love, and then my latest book is called Decoding Your Kink, Guide to Explore, Share, and Enjoy Your Wildest Sexual Desires. So that's kind of a roadmap about the considerations of how to operate your kink, but also how to access the depths of our kink sexuality, because kink, as I define it, or what I call fetish sexuality, is the psychological term that I use, and my part of my work and my research is to establish fetish sexuality as an authentic sexual identity, recognized by the American Psychiatric Association and psychological associations. Because this leads to legal issues. This is why I got ramrodded by because kink was thought to be pathological back in that time, and I had no legal or institutional ground to stand on in defense of who I was. So this is much like the gay and lesbian communities back in the 50s forward, you know, needed to establish these credibility of being, this is natural, normal in the gene pool, you know, so I'm working to establish fetish sexuality in the same regard, which is what part of my research is about. And so decoding your kink, though, also so this is what fetish sexuality is a person who's driven, a fetish sexual is a person driven to orgasm or other deep erotic state through an innate, inherent, lifelong desire for a particular range of power exchange or fetish-oriented sexuality. It includes an erotic mythos. It's so vanilla sex, I call it sex is friction, eros is myth, you know. So kink is a archetypal, symbolic, mythic-driven, story-oriented sexuality. It's not just friction sex. The friction is going on, and they're getting nothing wrong with friction sex. It can be a great release, but people who are into kink are much more engaged in this richer, more depthful, epic oriented sexuality, where you can scene for hours, a whole weekend, or even longer, immersed in this erotic intensity that has archetypal figures such as the overriding dominant and submissive. These are archetypal personas that are within the everyday. Within the everyday persona is the sexual persona. It's distinct from the everyday persona, and when it's activated and operated, when it's turned on, it's stepping into this mythic-driven story about some sort of encounter with the archetypal counterpart, and then they're off, So this is what's evidenced by, if you look at a site like FetLife, you see this pantheon of archetypal paired part and counterpart dyad dynamics, in a power exchange across a full spectrum of, daddy, daughter, mommy, son, teacher, student, biker, cheerleader, whatever. furry, and on and on. This is how vast, the psychological sexual territory is. And this is just starting to come to the fore and kink. So this book has some case studies about people who have, us, both as individuals and couples. It has about my research of the personal erotic myth survey and the data that's being extracted from that. And how to deal with some of the issues we talked about in terms of like erotic mismatches, or how to not get in those erotic mismatches, what to do if you are, and many other things.
Where can your books be bought? Because they're obviously very important reads.
Well, they're on Amazon.com. They can also be available through my website, GalenFous.com, GalenFous.com. You can also take the personal erotic myth survey. It's a totally anonymous survey. There's 40 questions on it, and so you can contribute. You can learn more about your own depths of your sexuality and what's getting in the way through taking the survey, and then you can opt in after you take it anonymously. There's a way that you can opt in to receive a link to the compiled data of all 4,000 people who have taken it, and it's a fascinating insight into the sexual psyche of what people are revealing in this survey. So that's the research side of it. I have a research team that is now analyzing the data, the qualitative and quantitative data, and we're about to embark on publishing results from the research there. So the book is there, my website there, working with clients, how to work with me as a client, as an individual or couple.
Yeah, I took
there.
the test.
My blog is there, and so.
I took your survey. I couldn't figure out how to get to the data though.
Well, you should. You can send me an email if you want, and I can send you the link. But there is at the end of once you complete the survey and you hit submit, you're taken to a page where you can now opt in. You should be taken to the page. I haven't heard anybody else say that it wasn't happening, but
it's more likely that I did a mess up. It really is. It happened.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you can opt in, and then the results are so amazing of what people reveal, because there's a lot of qualitative data where people can report, besides the choices that they might have, a question might have, they can then also contribute some of personal experience or something different than what's listed there, and all of that is so revealing. And in some ways, it's heartbreaking when people are talking about how the conflicts that they feel that we were talking about earlier are manifesting in their life. From I'm frigid, I can't be touched, I'm terrified, I just eat instead of have sex, and I'm depressed, and I'm so conflicted about what I desire and my religion or my feminism and my desire. I mean, people have just under the hood, so to speak, the shape of the sexual psyche in the United States is a mess. A tragic mess. I mean, it's hard. People need so much support to overcome these negative beliefs that have been embedded to them about how horrible they are and how horrible sexuality is and how horrible wanting and desiring things are. That it has to change, Yeah. Or there's going to be more and more people getting caught, busted, sneaking, hiding, cheating, and losing and their reputation, their families are. It's a terrible cost to our sexual psyche.
And you also do offer therapy.
Yeah, so I'm a therapist. I'm a transpersonal psychologist. I work with people both to embrace the desire and also untangle what's interfering with their desire, and learn how to operate consciously, mindfully, in impeccable integrity, how to negotiate boundaries and hold boundaries, your right to boundaries, all of those dimensions of the experience of embracing your sexuality is what I support people in. that way. I'm outside. I don't diagnose people. I don't operate by the DSM manual. I simply work with, okay, what do you desire? What's true for you? What's in the way? And then how can we take steps towards what you desire and take steps away from what's interfering with your desire? To find a lot of it boils down to really helping them find what I'll call their inner champion, the part of them that can say no to those negative messages, to literally start pushing back, to feel some power. And what that is taking your power back from the parts of you that have taken your power away sexually. Right now, those parts, those negative parts are dominating literally your sexuality. If you are blocked or not being honest or open, this is, it means you have an internal power dynamic where the shaming and the fear and the judgment, or in times trauma, people still have, because people have been violated around their sexuality. Again, but that's disempowered them. If you come to me with intention to, I want to take my power back from what's got it, yeah, we can work with that, because just you coming to me shows, yeah, that's the part of you that has the power. You might have been procrastinating or hiding or avoiding and not wanting to do this, but suddenly, this is why often people come to me when they're in their 40s and their 50s, because I'm tired of hiding this. I can't hide it any longer. I've got to do something about it. And so they're ready. That means they're ready. And that's powerful, just to be in that state. Then we can make progress on pushing back against what's getting in the way. And also, there's so much richness and depth to your sexuality that people really don't even understand is there, because you have to be embodied, present, mindful to get there. And that's the practices, again, that our culture does not teach people how to be embodied or present or mindful on the whole. But these are the gateways into the depths of your sexuality, and also the deep intimacy and connection with our partners that is available, the amount of trust that is generated by being able to be vulnerable and open and sharing the truth of your sexuality, because a lot of people have some pretty depraved, disgusting, taboo desires, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that if you're learning how to operate consensually and negotiably and with the education to understand what you're doing to make it risk aware. This is why sex education is so important, and part of the big problem we are in is because we have totally dropped the ball on sex education. Not only for teenagers and kids, but for adults. We don't even have sex education for adults. So I'm kind of a one-man sex education curriculum along helping people embrace their sexual truth and heal and resolve. We carry so many things that are stuck in the way, blocking our full expression. But this is all possible to work on. It's not that complicated. If you intend to get real about your sexuality and to heal from how it's been wounded in the past, nothing that's happened is bigger than your intention to embrace and take back your power and claim your truth and be who you are and live in the world fully as a complete human being, including your sexuality.
Okay, how do you feel about sex education in the schools? And and then the other thing is, do you think it might be helpful if parents were also attending along when they were giving it, or would that be too much?
Well, yeah, that's a big question. I'm not a sex education at that level expert by any means, but clearly, if children, young people, I would say sex education should start from middle school forward, maybe even earlier, but in some way. But clearly, by that stage, we need to be preparing our children about how to be educated, have agency, understand responsibilities and consequences, understand the diversity of sexuality that is out there, how to be tolerant and supportive of others whose sexuality might be different from you, how to negotiate and consent and birth control and safe sex practices and issues on and on and on. And yeah, I think at this point, since we haven't had any, we should start adult sex ed programs, that people can take like at their community college or online or such that are helping, and also for parents how to talk to your kids about sex and all those kinds of things. I mean, it's really important to open this conversation up and not be so overprotective of, oh, we don't want to expose our tender young children to sexuality. My God, that'd be horrible. Well, when we don't, look what happens.
Yeah.
They get their education from the locker room or online porn or all kinds of ways where they're not being really educated. They're being excited and turned on and expected. They get expectations about how they're supposed to be, which maybe aren't safe practices or aren't really what they want personally. So this is a horrible results from not educating our teenagers and middle schoolers about what's about to be unleashed within them and in their peer group.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it would be good, if you can get the parents and the kids in together where it was in an environment where conversation was opened up. I never had a problem with my son. It was just like, because my, past relationship he saw was, it was with his dad, but I split up very early with him, and then it was my master, and he saw that he was the leader, and he took control, but he didn't know what was going on necessarily in the bedroom because he was a child, but I've always been very open with him with, if you're going to be with a girl, you need to respect her, and, there's a jar of condoms over there, you don't want to end up with some kind of disease, and you need to be responsible, and you don't just go ahead and use this girl for your pleasure. You have to remember she's a human being, and all stuff, a young child doesn't want to hear from their mother, but he heard it, and now, so it's, we're just pretty open. It's,
yeah,
our dialogues.
We need more of that.
And so, and you don't have anything you do like that in your classes, in your seminars or books to talk about that?
Not currently, not in terms of, working with your children or educating, your children. I used to be involved in a group called Boys to Men and Inner Mentor Training. It was a mentoring program for, it had a rite of passage weekend that it started with for teenage boys, kind of hearkening back to the old traditions of the adult males and the elders initiated the teenage boys into mature, responsible masculinity. And so in that initial weekend, there used to be, when I first got involved, there was a sex talk on Sunday. It starts on Thursday and goes through Sunday. And I was excited. Oh, great, we're going to talk about it. And when we're having the initial meeting of the staff, it's like you have 50 staff and there's 25 young boys, young men taking the weekend. And so we have our staff meetings first. And we got to that place and they said, well, we used to do this, but we kind of stopped because they don't want to talk and we don't know what to say. And so I stood up and said, wait a minute, let me do this. I can do this because we're here about, teaching them authentic masculinity and being in integrity and being honest and speaking your truth. And we're dodging sex. That doesn't cut it, So I did run that program then for 7 years of running the sex talk part of the weekend, and and I basically just came up with the formula of I would just start with the question, so what's the right age for you to start having sex? And boom, they were off and running. Everybody had an opinion and their statement, because I didn't teach them or tell them there was a right age. I asked them what they thought was the right age for them. And then so people would say, "Oh, I'm ready now," or "I'm already having sex," and so then it says, "Okay, so what do you do about safer sex practices? Do you know about them?" What? Or "Oh yeah, I use a condom." I mean, they were very aware and very open to hearing and wanting, curious, and so, well, what about STDs? And now I say, so you're ready to have sex now? You're 14. Are you ready to be a father? You realize if you're going to have sex, the risk of or the possibility of getting someone pregnant is there. So if you're going to have sex now, you have to understand what it means, and are you ready to be a father? Are you willing to accept that responsibility, because that is a responsibility of having sex. So the conversation, I think, is pretty straightforward that you could have with kids to help open their eyes about both the responsibilities and the opportunities, and not make it like wait till you're married. That's nobody's going to do that. Just say no, that didn't work. So we need to do better at treating our young people as young adults, as able to understand and comprehend and be open to being educated and wanting to be educated about the risks, responsibilities, opportunities, and consensual negotiation with their partners. And some can choose, well, I mean, I'm going to wait till I'm married. Fine. No, I'm I'm ready to have sex right now. Well, do it responsibly and be in integrity with it and be safe, with it. Nature's activated us at that stage to be, sexual. So, I mean, it's normal. It's natural. Culturally, we have all kinds of taboos and restrictions around it, but, we have to accept and understand that, nature, the force of nature is at play here. The best thing we can do is to get responsible about how we educate our young people to operate their sexuality.
Okay, I think, let me see if I go to my notes here.
Well, let's maybe wind it down from here, or maybe
Okay.
one more thought there, and then I've got some things to move on to, too.
Yeah, I think we hit all the key topics. What was your last thing you would like to say? And I also want you to promote your site and your books and where to find them,
Mm-hmm.
and that man's group you're having in Portland. That sounds very exciting.
Yeah. It's I have an event link up on the being a sexually conscious, authentic, and empowered man. I have it up on FetLife. There's a FetLife event. It's January 5th and 6th in Portland. That can be found there. My website is GalenFous.com, GalenFous.com. My books are there working with me. If you're a client who wants support around some aspect of your sexuality, or kind of education, insight into the various aspects of kink. This Discover Your Personal Erotic Myth survey is there. I'm also the inventor and designer of the Tetris Shibari suspension bondage rig, BDSM dungeon, and sex swing that have been operating since 2000, almost 20 years now. The Tetris being deployed out in the world. That's at TETRUSS.com. Portable, lightweight, freestanding, used by some of the top Shibari suspension riggers in the world, and also just as a great all-around dungeon toy. You don't need it also works with, besides just rope, you can use stirrups and cuffs and different things, so you don't need to know how to tie someone properly to suspend them. You can suspend them, and they can be quite comfortable while you do nasty things to them. So that's also, you can find that through my FetLife profile if you're on FetLife. So I just really want to thank you for having me on here, and to your listeners, and just to let everybody, be encouraged to be who you are. Be find the way to be empowered in who you are, and which often means healing or resolving what's holding your expression back or keeping it secret or hiding. It's difficult to come out further, but it's also incredibly rewarding, and there are well-laid paths now to help people to come to terms with their sexuality and engage in, community, find partners, and operate with an educated understanding of what you're getting involved in.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. For all the listeners, they know me well, and I messed up so bad. I came to the meeting on the wrong day, and you were so gracious, and you've been so kind and wonderful to reschedule with me. And I cannot thank you enough. Because I think what you have to say in your message and all you're doing is so important to get out to as many people as possible. And I so appreciate you rescheduling with me. I can't thank you enough.
It was a pleasure. No problem.
So,
keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and turn off my recording device right here. And thank you so much. And that was Galen Fous. I got it right this time.
Yes.